Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Coffee and Current Events. Today we have very interesting updates straight from the front in Ukraine, mainly in eastern Ukraine. Today we're going to be talking about the Battle of Bakhmut. So let's go there right now. So as you can see, the Battle of Bakhmut is raging. Russian forces are consistently pushing closer and closer to Bakhmut. Now here's one thing I want you guys to get. If I zoom into the map, you can see Avaniivske, okay? This is Bakhmut's proverbial lifeline, at least on the surface. You just roll from Avaniivske. That means Ukrainians can get supplies from Chasiv Yar, other cities, and it's going directly into Bakhmut. The Russians are very close to this road, as you can see, and if they happen to take this road, it may be game over for Ukraine, but not so fast. It has been revealed that Ukraine actually has underground tunnels into Bakhmut, meaning that they can still send supplies into the city, and the Russians, even if they take the road near Avaniivske, they still won't be able to stop the supplies. However, I think it's only a little bit of time before the Russians discover where this tunnel is from. It doesn't take too long when you got thousands of forces on the ground. Fighting is mainly going on near the train station in Bakhmut. That train station is seeing such fierce ferocity. In fact, a lot of people are saying it's the fiercest fighting we have seen in Bakhmut, and Bakhmut already is a horrifically fierce battle. So this battle is raging. I would not give Bakhmut too much longer. I want to give Bakhmut too much more time before it falls to the Russians. The reason why is because the Russians are putting so much forces here. In fact, a lot of evidence is suggesting that now it's not only Wagnerians storming Bakhmut, it's also Russian soldiers, maybe paratroopers, VDV, special forces, Russian army, maybe even Russian Marines. They could all be storming Bakhmut now, so the Russians are putting a lot of their forces right here. Their goal is likely to capture Bakhmut before the Ukrainian spring offensive. And the reason for that is quite obvious. Ukraine has a lot of forces stationed all around this front near Bakhmut preparing for a counteroffensive. In fact, according to some sources from Wagner, Ukraine may have 80,000 men stationed from here all the way to this area right here, and these men are going to be involved in this massive Ukrainian offensive if Ukraine launches one. That means that the Russian forces are in a dangerous position, because if Ukrainian forces attack from here, they can flank Russian positions near Soledar, and if they reach Soledar and Krasna Hora right here, they have completely cut off the Russian forces, and the Russian force will be divided. Then the Russian forces are risking being encircled. What's that going to force the Russian forces to do? It's going to force them to withdraw from this entire vicinity, meaning all their gains of 8 months of warfare in Bakhmut is going to be evaporated. And that would be an absolute disaster. So the Russian forces want to capture Bakhmut fully. That way they can solidify their lines. And if the Russians are able to solidify their lines, even if the Ukrainians launch a counteroffensive, it will be stiffly resisted. It doesn't matter about the Western equipment being sent there. Once the Russian lines solidify, it will be an extremely tough fight to recapture Bakhmut. Now, Ukraine is still allegedly sending reinforcements in the region, meaning that the Ukrainians are likely to keep the fight for Bakhmut going for a little longer. However, if you haven't noticed, Ukrainian rhetoric about Bakhmut has been softening. At first, Ukraine was saying we will not let go of Bakhmut, we're not going to give it Bakhmut. Now Zelensky is saying he will withdraw his forces if Bakhmut is encircled. I think the rhetoric is kind of chilling out because they know that Bakhmut is going to get encircled, and it's not worth losing thousands upon thousands of more forces over the city. I told you before multiple times on my channel that Ukraine should have withdrawn from Bakhmut a long time ago. They never should have been in this city. It doesn't make sense to be in this city. I said around December, January, they should have withdrawn. The reason why, because the city is strategically important. But Bakhmut is not the key to Ukraine. It's not the key to Donbas. If the Russians take it, it will make it a lot easier for them to take Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, but that does not mean that will happen. Therefore, I think the Ukrainians should have withdrawn a long time ago from Bakhmut, because now it's becoming a seemingly senseless slaughter in which the Ukrainians are losing a lot of men. Now, if we go down to Avdiivka, Russia has made some gains around the Avdiivka area. Around the Avdiivka area, the Russians have made multiple gains. They are pressing their advance, and the goal of this is to encircle Avdiivka, because Avdiivka was one of the first cities attacked during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The opening phases, that's one of the first cities that was hit, and people are like, why didn't the Russians advance? Well, Ukraine had built Avdiivka into a fortress basically since the beginning of the war in Donbas back in 2014. This city is heavily guarded, and if the Russians actually attempt to storm Avdiivka, it will turn to an absolute slaughter, a bloodbath. Russia could literally lose thousands of soldiers trying to storm Avdiivka. So they want to encircle it. They want to come from the flanks, cut it off, and then force the Ukrainians to withdraw. Either encircle the city or force the Ukrainians to withdraw. So that's what it looks like they're doing in Avdiivka. That's basically what's going on, and we can definitely say that the fiercest fighting in this war right now is definitely taking place in Bakhmut and probably Avdiivka as well. And let me tell you guys something, Bakhmut is a modern Stalingrad. There's not been one battle involving NATO, Russia, or Ukraine that has been as bloody as Bakhmut in the last 20 years. Of course, there's been some battles probably in Africa and other places that have been just as bloody. But in the West and Russia, not one battle has been as bloody as Bakhmut. This is literally a modern-day Stalingrad. Okay, if you go up to the north, the fighting is still fierce. Along the Savatove-Kremenna line is still fierce. Russians are likely trying to break through to Liman. If you guys remember during the Ukrainian Kharkiv counteroffensive, their advance came to a halt against the Russian line in Luhansk. along this entire area. If you go to Dorvicina all the way down to here, Savatove, and even if you go down to Lysychansk, this Russian line is what's holding the Ukrainians back. Now, to be clear, the Ukrainians are not on the offensive in this area, to my knowledge. They're currently in a defensive position, but their offensive was halted here, likely meaning the Russians have a large amount of forces stationed here. Their main base is probably Starobilsk, and they're probably sending force to the front line here. And now the Russians are on the offensive, but it's a very slow assault because both sides are heavily entrenched in this region. If we zoom into the southern front of Ukraine, it doesn't look like there's been too much action around here. Everything looks pretty much the same. Now, there probably are some small recon operations like Ukrainian recon forces testing Russian lines, Russian recon forces probing Ukrainian lines. That's probably what's going on. It's almost a daily thing in war, especially in the Ukraine war. So there's not been any major Ukrainian offensive, any major Ukrainian attempt to break through the southern front, which would be a very major thing considering the fact that many people are saying Zaporozhye, the Zaporozhye Oblast, is the key to Crimea. Now, Zelensky has said multiple times, it began with Crimea, it will end with Crimea, meaning the war. So Ukraine wants to recapture Crimea. But the most efficient way they could do this is by capturing Zaporozhye, therefore dividing the Russian forces in Donbas and Kherson and forcing their way into Crimea from there, because the Russian forces in Kherson, now being divided from their supply line, will most likely be forced to withdraw, and therefore they could take Crimea. There's been no major changes in the southern front. Most of the fighting is going on in Bakhmut and Avdiivka. And I think we'll see Bakhmut fall within the next month. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Make sure that you subscribe to Coffee and Current Events' channel. That way you can get consistent updates about what's going on in the Ukraine war, and you can get the information, just the facts. A lot of channels are giving the facts of the information, but they're putting in a lot of biases in there, and frankly, they're distorting the facts. At Coffee and Current Events, you're going to get the facts, you're going to get what's really going on, and you won't have to worry about distorted media lies like the mainstream media feeds you. Just facts, no biases. If you want the truth about what's going on across the world, subscribe to Coffee and Current Events, and you'll get it consistently. Anyway, God bless you, and I'll see you next time.